guys, so I decided to do the school disciplinary gap as the topic for my final paper, and this is something I'm passionate about because there's a lot of small problems throughout the Black community, systematic problems anyway, throughout the Black community that have major consequences throughout the just have major consequences. So I really just wanted to shed some light on this issue and give some strategies and ways for how we can decrease this and prevent it, and ultimately help the Black males within our community. So without further ado, I want to start off by saying that African American males are disproportionately disciplined throughout the public school system within the United States at a very alarming rate. And according to the Department of Educational Office of Civil Rights, 42% of Black preschool children were suspended and had an increased amount of referrals, while 28% of their white peers did as well. So these harsh punishments of young Black boys tend to stem from implicit biases that are portrayed throughout the media, and that give a negative portrayal of the Black community. We're often depicted as being aggressive, troublesome, problematic, and resistant to authority, things like that. So these implicit biases are subconsciously woven into your minds. So even if you are an educator, administrator, teacher, and you outwardly despise being prejudiced or discriminatory acts, deep in the thoughts of your mind, you're still going to have these implicit biases no matter what we do. So implicit biases for young Black males has been around for a very, very long time, and it started initially after the 1954 ruling of Brown versus the Board of Education, where it granted equal educational rights for Black people, and they had to integrate the school systems. But what a lot of people don't know is that they had to also integrate the work staff. And basically it was, all right, we're already integrating our school with Black students, there's no way that we're going to do it for teachers. And so what they would do is they would integrate these Black students, and they would hire more middle-class white women as teachers and they would just disregard the Black teachers. So even though the Black teachers had a job at their Black schools, they weren't even considered during that process. So what this did was it created an all-white teaching staff to these Black students, and the teachers would have a hard time relating to them culturally. They just could not relate to Black students. Initially they were trying to integrate, so all of a sudden they're supposed to know how these students feel and their backgrounds and what they're supposed to do, which is not very reliable. So a study was done, and even at the early age of 5, Black males are already seen as aggressive. And I want to say Harvard University did a study where they put up a video of 4 children. It was a black boy, a white boy, a white female, and a Black female. And so what they did was they told the teachers to identify, troublesome behavior or challenging behavior throughout the video. And even though I wanted to say in the video there was no challenging behavior displayed, but they found that these teachers were more focused on the Black boy in the video than any other child in the room. They automatically assumed he was displaying the most troublesome behavior out of all of them. So what that study basically showed was that teachers, Black and white teachers, are harping more on Black boys and punishing them more and suspending them and expelling them more. So what this does is having one single suspension within the first year automatically doubles a Black boy's chances of dropping out and triples their chances of going to jail, which automatically means they're entering the juvenile justice system. Thus, this creates psychological and economical effect consequences for the children, because they are more likely to have depression, and they are more likely to continue the cycle of poverty throughout the community. And ultimately, this tends to fuel the school to prison pipeline, which is literally what I had just stated, them having all these suspensions, these kids being expelled and just not given a chance to gain an education, are more likely to go to jail. And even when they get out of jail, they are 5 times more likely to be reincarcerated. And it literally continues a never-ending cycle of systematic oppression for the Black community. And I also found that another reason that Black males are punished more is the zero tolerance policy. So the zero tolerance policy was enacted in the 1980s to combat the war on drugs. And it basically takes like these minimalizing acts and turn them into criminal acts. So like minor infractions such as like back talking, being disruptive, or listening to music are automatically have serious consequences. But serious infractions such as fighting, truancy, or even theft are criminal acts, and they're automatically arrested. So these children automatically are being pushed into the criminal justice system from the young age of 14, 15, and 16. So that automatically increases the prison population of Black males. And we all already know that Black males are one of the most incarcerated groups throughout this country. And that is why I wanted to talk about this problem, because something as small as school discipline can factor into systematic oppression of Black males. And so, another thing is it's a huge lack in cultural understanding of some teachers. I found that even in the school that I work in, many of the teachers don't understand the culture that a lot of the Black students come from. So, for example, like joking around or shadow boxing, things like that kids do, that things are playful, and these teachers think that it's very like problematic behavior when it's really not. So it's really a disconnect through administrators and children. And I found that in order to combat this, certain strategies have to be implemented. So for one, we can amend the zero tolerance policy. So not making so much hoopla on those minor infractions. So things like being disruptive or talking back, like we can treat those as, minor acts instead of making them huge ordeals that dwell into suspension. Also, we can establish a discipline database, and what this basically does is tracks patterns and behaviors of these students by race, age, and gender, and it basically makes school districts accountable for their disciplinary actions. And then that can basically say like, okay, this school has a problem disciplining a lot of Black students, or this school doesn't, and then they can go back and forth and see which policies need to be amended to combat this issue. We can also refer a lot of problematic students to counselors and social workers. I found, within the research, it stated that a lot of children act out as a way to cope with a lot of outside influences, such as like poverty, abuse, neglect, things like that. So these children who are deemed problematic or troublesome are really crying for help. And even though, children may not understand that negative attention is not positive attention, just that initial attention enough is something that they're not getting from home, and that they rather get that than positive attention. So referring them to counselors, their school counselors, things like that would really, really, really help. Also, making teachers culturally aware of certain things, like certain words, phrases, activities that some Black children do that others don't, would really, really, really help. Also, with being culturally aware, these teachers can then establish their class rules from the very beginning. So they can also respect their culture, but not demeaning it, saying that's not, they can basically say okay, we understand that you do that outside of school, but within the classroom, that is not appropriate behavior, and that will not be tolerated. So once those rules are set from the beginning is when kids know, like, okay, I can't joan on my friends, I can't do certain things with my friends because I'm going to get in trouble for it. Also, I found that when doing research on this topic, there wasn't a lot of initial research on this topic. So it just really puzzled me to see that there wasn't a lot of studies being done on black children. And it's shocking because, like, once again, black males are one of the most incarcerated group in this country, but there's not a lot of studies being done on this one issue that can actually stop that and change that. So I just really wanted to bring awareness to this and say, like, school discipline is something that we can make better, and we can actually do more one-on-one and rehabilitative activities with these children to decrease these like behavioral acts and understand where they're coming from, make better light of their situations. So, thank you.